You want to know the truth? Love doesn't begin with a text message. It doesn't grow through compliments or melt under candlelight dinners. Love, real love, begins with memory. The kind of memory that lingers even when you're not in the room. The kind of memory that carves itself into someone's core without needing permission. And make no mistake, every moment you live, every interaction you share becomes a blueprint someone holds on to when they start to fall. Today, we're not talking about flowers or feelings. We're talking about power. The kind of power that comes from being unforgettable. Because love isn't just about how someone sees you, it's about what they never forget about you. So let's get clear on the 6 things etched into memory when love starts to rise. There's a difference between being physically close and being truly present. One creates moments, the other creates memories that last long after the moment is over. Presence is the invisible thread that binds 2 people together, not naughty, but in mind, in spirit, in depth. And yet, in a world obsessed with performance, where validation is chased and roles are played, presence has become rare, almost radical. But the truth is, when someone starts to fall in love, they don't remember the perfection of your moves. They remember the power of your attention. Real connection doesn't thrive in noise. It thrives in stillness, in the kind of eye contact that doesn't flinch, in the kind of touch that pauses, not out of hesitation but intention. When you bring presence into intimacy, it feels like time slows down. Every gesture becomes amplified. Every look becomes a conversation. Every silence becomes sacred. That's the difference between attraction and intimacy. One is fleeting. The other is imprinted. And presence isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's psychological. It's the ability to shut out distractions, not just the phone or the room, but the urge to perform, the pressure to impress, the internal noise that tells you to be someone else. When you are fully you, grounded, intentional, connected, you allow someone to experience you, not just touch you. That is what becomes unforgettable. You've probably felt it before, the difference between someone who touches your body while their mind is elsewhere and someone who touches your soul with nothing but a glance. That's the difference presence makes. It's not about volume, it's about vibration. It's not about doing more, it's about feeling more. And in intimacy, feeling is everything. When you're truly present, you start to notice things you've never seen before. The rhythm of breath, the shift in energy, the smallest change in body language. You stop performing and start perceiving. The greatest intimacy doesn't live in grand moments. It lives in subtlety, the way someone listens with their entire body, the way they respond with no delay, not because they're trying to be perfect, but because they're in it, fully, wholeheartedly, without fear or hesitation. You don't need to rehearse your lines. When your presence speaks louder than words, that's when intimacy becomes more than connection. It becomes recognition.
There was something deeply erotic,
Deeply powerful about someone who slows down, someone who's not in a rush to get to the end, someone who treats every part of the experience, not just physically, but emotionally, as something to savor. Presence says, I am not here to conquer. I am here to experience. That subtle shift changes everything. It turns a moment into meaning. It turns chemistry into connection. It turns the ordinary into the sacred. Most people are used to being half seen, touched but not felt, heard but not listened to. That's why presence hits differently. It disrupts the pattern. It says, I'm not here, take from you. I'm here to be with you. And being with someone fully, completely, is the rarest gift you can offer. When you give someone the experience of being the only person that exists in your world for that moment, they never forget it. That's not performance. That's power. The irony, presence doesn't require effort, it requires release. The release of trying, the release of scripting, the release of fear, the release of the ego. You don't need to control the moment to make it meaningful. You just need to be in the moment, without resistance, without distraction, without agenda. That's when intimacy deepens. That's when the walls fall. That's when the real connection starts to take root. When someone starts to fall in love, what they hold on to is not the fantasy. They hold on to the feeling of being seen, of being safe, of being understood without explanation. That doesn't come from technique. That doesn't come from perfection. That comes from presence, from the space you create by being fully tuned into them, fully rooted in yourself. Because when your attention is undivided, your energy becomes undeniable. Even in silence, your presence can speak louder than anything else. It can say, I'm here, I see you, I feel you. I'm not escaping this moment, I'm with it. And then level of presence, that kind of awareness, that's what shifts casual connection into emotional gravity. That's what makes someone's soul reach back toward you without understanding why. Not because you played a role, not because you checked the right boxes, but because your presence was medicine. Because in a world full of half-present people, you showed up fully. Because you weren't there to prove anything. You were there to feel everything. And the one thing nobody ever forgets is how you made them feel when you were fully there. There's something magnetic about safety, emotional safety. It isn't loud. It doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't dress itself up in grand displays. But when it's there, it changes everything. It softens the sharp edges. It makes the body relax. It makes the heart feel like it can finally breathe. And when it's absent, even the most passionate moments feel hollow. Because intimacy doesn't live in performance. It lives in permission. The permission to be real, to be raw, to let the guard down, without fear of being judged, punished, or abandoned. The truth is, most people are craving something they don't even know how to articulate. It's not just touch. It's not just attention. It's the feeling of being accepted completely. The experience of being able to show up with every flaw, every scar, every layer, and still be met with openness. When that kind of safety is present, the intimacy becomes transformational because it's no longer about seduction. It becomes about surrender. Emotional safety is not about avoiding conflict. It's not about being soft-spoken or endlessly agreeable. It's about consistency. It's about someone knowing that when they reveal more of themselves, you won't flinch. You won't weaponize their vulnerability. You won't shame their softness. You'll meet it, not with fear, but with grace. You'll hold it, not with judgment, but with respect. That kind of presence disarms even the most guarded hearts. It teaches people that they don't have to perform to be loved. They can be and still be enough. Imagine the kind of connection where silence doesn't mean distance, where a sigh isn't misinterpreted as rejection, where someone doesn't have to tiptoe around their truth because they know it will be received, not rejected. That's what emotional safety looks like. It creates a psychological space where honesty can exist without backlash, where difficult truths can be spoken, not hidden, where intimacy becomes an invitation, not a demand.
Most people never truly experience this.
They grow up learning to armor themselves, to be strong, to be cool, to be whatever it takes to avoid being hurt. And so they carry those defenses into their relationships. They hold back. They second guess. They play roles instead of being themselves. But when they meet someone who's rooted in emotional maturity, someone who doesn't punish vulnerability, they start to relax. They start to breathe. And in that breath, they begin to trust. Trust isn't built through words, it's built through repetition, through the small, subtle moments that communicate, you're safe here, you're not too much, I can handle all of you. It's in how you respond when emotions rise. It's in how you stay when things get uncomfortable. It's in how you listen, not just hear. Emotional safety is created in those quiet moments, when someone expects to be abandoned, but you stay, when someone expects to be shamed, but you validate, when someone expects to be shamed, but you validate, when someone expects to be misunderstood, but you take the time to understand. And make no mistake, emotional safety is deeply sensual. It creates a level of closeness that raw attraction alone could never reach. It lets people unfold slowly, beautifully. It turns intimacy into exploration, because now there's no fear of being punished for being human. There's no fear of rejection mid-sentence. There's only expansion, growth, curiosity, the willingness to dive deeper. Not because you have to, but because it finally feels safe. There is a profound intimacy in letting someone be flawed around you, in showing them that they don't have to constantly edit themselves, they don't have to package their emotions in pretty language, they don't have to be composed all the time. When someone feels like they don't have to shrink themselves to keep your attention, that's when they start to show you parts of themselves they've never shown anyone, and that right there is where real intimacy begins. It's not what they show everyone, it's what they only show when it feels safe. You become the place where masks fall away, where someone doesn't feel like they have to manage your perception of them every second, where they can cry without apologizing, where they can be quiet without being questioned, where they can express anger, sadness, fear, and know that it won't cost them your affection. That's when closeness stops being temporary. That's when it anchors itself in trust. Because now it's not just about chemistry, it's about home. And the most unforgettable experiences are the ones where people felt like they could just be, where they were held emotionally, not just physically, where they didn't feel like. There's a quiet strength in the ability to hold space without chasing. It doesn't roar, it doesn't demand. It simply is. And in that stillness, there's power. Because the truth is, the more grounded you are in yourself, the less you feel the need to reach, grasp, or prove. There's a magnetic quality to someone who knows how to lean back, not out of disinterest, but out of deep trust in their own worth. And in intimacy, that quality doesn't go unnoticed. It's felt, it's remembered. When someone doesn't have to be pursued to be present, when they offer connection instead of chasing validation, it shifts the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the energy becomes more about invitation than obligation. You become the one who creates space, not pressure. And that kind of space invites curiosity. It invites desire. It gives room for someone to move toward you, not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it. That's the difference between attraction that burns out and connection that builds. The pull of presence without pursuit is subtle but powerful. It's in the way you hold your own, the way you sit in silence without trying to fill it, the way you listen without trying to fix. You become someone who is not just desirable, but safe, not just interesting, but intentional. And people feel that. They feel when you're not trying to win them over. They feel when you're not performing, not proving, not pushing. They feel when your energy says, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I need to be. There is nothing more attractive than someone who knows they are enough and behaves like it. Not in arrogance, but in certainty. The kind of certainty that whispers rather than screams. The kind that doesn't chase attention but naturally draws it. Because there's nothing louder than someone who's silent and still, yet deeply rooted in who they are. That kind of energy is undeniable. It's the presence of someone who is deeply connected to themselves. And because of that, they don't cling, they don't chase, they attract. This isn't about games. It's not about withholding affection or pretending not to care. It's about self-respect. It's about emotional maturity. It's about understanding that intimacy built on desperation will always crumble, while intimacy built on balance will always endure. When you stop chasing, you allow someone else the space to show up on their own terms. And when they do, you get to witness something powerful. Not obligation, but genuine choice. Not obligation, but desire. And desire cannot be forced. It must be invited, cultivated, allowed. That happens when you stop trying to control the connection and start trusting it. That happens when you become okay with space, when you learn to rest in uncertainty without reaching for control. Because the truth is, the more comfortable you are with someone taking their time, the more powerful your presence becomes. Not because you're passive, but because you're poised. It's easy to chase, it's easy to fill the silence, it's easy to overgive, over-explain, overextend. What's harder and infinitely more powerful is restraint. Emotional restraint, the kind that comes from security, not scarcity. The kind that says, I don't need to chase love, I am love, and the right person will recognize that. That level of self-possession isn't common, but when it's felt, it's unforgettable. It creates a gravitational pull that can't be faked. When you don't chase, you give others the opportunity to meet you halfway. You allow the connection to breathe, to unfold, to show itself for what it really is. Because sometimes, the more you chase, the more you cloud your own clarity. You confuse momentum for meaning. You trade depth for response. But when you lean back, when you allow the connection to reveal itself without force, you get to see its truth. You get to see whether it's being built on genuine interest or just emotional convenience. Leaning back doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're conscious. It means you're aware of your value. It means you're not so desperate for intimacy that you forget to protect your energy. You're not afraid of being alone. You're not afraid of spinning. You're not afraid of waiting because you're not trying to fill a void. You're trying to build something real. The most magnetic energy in intimacy is the one that's unattached to outcome. The one that says, I'm not here to convince you of my worth. I'm here to live it. That energy lingers. It stays in the room even after you've left. It lives in memory, not because it tried to be remembered, but because it couldn't be forgotten. So when you choose to hold space instead of chasing, when you trust yourself enough to let the energy flow without force, you tap into a deeper kind of intimacy, one rooted in sovereignty, one that gives without the begging, one that invites without demanding. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. The dynamic shifts, the pressure disappears, the masks fall away. And what remains is a connection that's not being chased, but chosen, not being forced, but felt, not being performed, but lived. It's never the grand gestures that leave the deepest marks, it's the subtle ones. The moments so small, so easily overlooked, that most never realize their weight. But intimacy doesn't bloom in big displays. It grows in the quiet, nuanced layers that build emotional texture, the way someone tilts their head slightly when they're listening, the pause before a smile, the way they touch you mid-conversation, not out of desire, but recognition. It's these micro-expressions of attention that turn moments into memories. Sensuality isn't loud. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it lingers in the air between glances. It lives in the anticipation that builds with every second of genuine presence. When someone truly notices you, when they're attuned to your rhythm and emotionally dialed in, the smallest act becomes intensely intimate. The brushing away of a hair strand, the way they adjust your sleeve, the way their voice softens when they say your name. That's the kind of intimacy no script can teach. It comes from a deep well of awareness. Being attuned is more than being physically close. It's about listening to what isn't being said. It's the way you feel someone's energy shift without a word being spoken, the way your eyes track each other across a room and something unspoken passes between you. That's not chemistry, that's connection. That's emotional fluency in its rawest form. And this isn't about perfection. It's not about getting every move right. It's about being so present, so locked into the moment, that every gesture is a reflection of that awareness. You're not trying to impress, you're not trying to seduce. You're simply present, and that presence elevates the ordinary into the unforgettable. It's a slow burn, the kind of energy that builds without effort because it's being nurtured by intention, not expectation. There's something undeniably powerful about someone who notices the small things, who sees the way you blink faster when you're nervous, who hears the shift in your tone when something bothers you, who doesn't wait for you to say, I need you to care, because they already do, not through words, but through attention. That kind of attention feels like safety, like gravity, like home. And when it's real, you feel it before you understand it. You feel it in your body. You feel it in the way you soften. You feel it in the way you lean in, without realizing. Intimacy is built in these spaces, not the ones filled with noise, but the ones laced with silence and subtlety. When two people are so emotionally present with each other that even the breath their words carries meaning, that's where the foundation grows. Because in those moments, what's really being communicated isn't I want you, it's I see you. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most intimate experiences a human being can have. There's an emotional intelligence behind these subtle gestures, a depth, a quiet confidence. When you're not trying to dominate the moment, you become receptive to it. You start to pick up on emotional cues. You learn to touch with presence, not just pressure. You start to speak less and connect more. And every time you mirror someone's rhythm, adjust to their energy, or intuitively respond to what they're not saying, you're building a kind of intimacy that's almost telepathic. We're taught to believe intimacy is about intensity, but the truth is, intensity fades if there's no intention behind it. The flame can burn hot, but without attention to the small things, it burns out. What lasts is the depth created by slow, thoughtful moments. The way someone reaches for your hand, not to hold on, but to connect. The way they remember the way you like your tea. The way their touch adapts to your mood. That's the kind of care that can't be faked. That's the kind of sensuality that builds trust without a single promise spoken. The little things, the glance, the tone, the soft brushing of a thumb over skin are not meaningless. They're data, they're language. They're the signals that intimacy is alive, and when someone pays attention to them, they're telling you, without needing to say it, that you matter, that you're worth paying attention to, that they don't just want to be near your body, they want to understand the entire language of your being. In this kind of intimacy, nothing is rushed. The pace slows, the moment stretches, every kiss, every touch, every word feels deliberate. Because it is. Because you're not in a hurry to reach a destination, you're already immersed in the experience. That's the magic of paying attention to the small things. It transforms interaction into intimacy. It builds emotional safety. It dissolves resistance. It creates a rhythm only the two of you can hear. And once someone feels this, once they experience that kind of intentional, emotionally intelligent connection, they don't forget it. They may forget what was said, they may forget where it happened, but they won't forget how they felt in that moment when nothing big happened, but everything changed. There is something undeniably powerful about silence when it's held, not avoided, when it's welcomed, not feared. In most connections, silence is the space people rush to fill, the awkward gap they try to cover with words, jokes, distractions. But in the deepest forms of intimacy, silence becomes sacred. It becomes a language in itself. Because when you can sit with someone without needing to perform, explain, or entertain, you've crossed into a different level of connection. You've entered a space where presence is enough. Stillness in intimacy isn't absence, it's depth. It's where the noise ends and the real feeling begins. It's in those quiet moments where nothing is being said, yet everything is being understood. And when two people can share that kind of space, it creates an emotional resonance that can't be replicated by volume or constant activity. That stillness becomes the doorway to trust, because it proves that being together isn't contingent on stimulation. It's grounded in comfort, security, and presence. Most people are conditioned to fill every moment, to talk through the silence, to keep the energy alive with action. But the ones who can hold stillness, the ones who don't flinch in the quiet, those are the ones who stand out because they're not rushing towards something. They're not trying to control the rhythm of the connection. They're simply in tune with themselves, with the moment, with the energy that's being exchanged without words. In that stillness, something beautiful happens. Walls start to fall. When someone isn't trying to be impressive, when they're not performing or compensating or explaining, you get to see the real essence of who they are. And even more, they get to feel the safety of simply existing in your presence. That level of comfort becomes addictive. It becomes unforgettable because it's rare to find someone who can simply be. Stillness is often mistaken for passivity, but in truth, it's power. It takes confidence to allow space, to not force every moment into something, to trust that the connection can hold its own without being constantly managed. There's a strength in silence that loudness can never compete with. And when that silence is emotionally charged, when it's filled with awareness, unspoken understanding, and raw presence, it becomes one of the most intimate experiences two people can share. When you're emotionally in tune, you start to notice that the most meaningful parts of a connection don't always happen during conversation. Sometimes it's in the way someone breathes, the way their body shifts, the way their energy pulses beside you. Stillness allows you to tune into those things. It sharpens perception. It slows everything down, so you can feel more, notice more, sense more. And that's when you move from surface to soul. Holding silence in intimacy isn't about ignoring, it's about listening with more than ears. It's about becoming receptive. It's about giving space for the other person to process, to feel, sometimes the most healing thing you can offer isn't advice, words, or solutions. It's silence, the kind of silence that wraps around someone like safety, the kind that says, you don't have to rush, I'm not going anywhere. This space is yours too. People open up when they don't feel pressured, and stillness is the most powerful way to relieve that pressure. When you're not filling every second with stimulation, you're signaling that there's no need to perform, no need to entertain, no need to be anything other than real. That creates trust. It creates a rhythm where connection isn't forced, it's felt, and that rhythm becomes the heartbeat of real intimacy. There's also something undeniably sensual about stillness. When you're not rushing through the experience, every moment becomes heightened. Every touch, every glance, every pause becomes electric. Anticipation builds in the quiet. Energy amplifies when words fall away. You're no longer reacting, you're feeling. You're no longer talking. You're communicating on a deeper, more primal level. One that doesn't rely on logic or language. One that's felt through presence, through body, through silence. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence becomes seductive. It becomes a rare form of expression, and the person who knows how to hold that space becomes unforgettable. They become the anchor in the chaos, the one who doesn't need to do the most to be the most, the one who brings calm, depth, and gravity into every moment, not through effort, but through embodiment. That's the beauty of stillness in intimacy. It's not about withdrawal, it's about presence. It's about trusting the connection enough to stop managing it. It's about allowing the space to speak as loud as the words. And it's in that space, those moments of breath, those pauses of quiet, that the deepest intimacy grows. Not because something dramatic is happening, but because nothing is being forced and everything is being felt. So pause and done and there's a magnetic shift that happens when someone stops asking for permission to be who they are. When they no longer shrink themselves to be palatable, no longer hide their intensity, their softness, their fire, their sensuality. That kind of unapologetic authenticity becomes a rare, irresistible force, because in a world full of masks, someone who stands fully in their truth becomes unforgettable. Not just attractive, but intoxicating. They radiate presence. They move differently. They make you feel like you're witnessing something real, something raw, something sacred. Intimacy thrives where authenticity lives, when you're not pretending, when you're not curating your personality to fit into someone else's expectations, when you're not performing emotional perfection. There's no deeper form of connection than the one built on truth. Not the polished version, but the one that's raw, vulnerable, layered. The truth that says, this is me, fully, without apology, without dilution. That's where emotional resonance is born. That's where real chemistry begins. Not because you're trying to be seductive, but because you're being real. And it shows up in the way someone speaks their truth without flinching, the way they express their desires, not with shame, but with grounded confidence, the way they can own their flaws and still look you dead in the eyes, without blinking, without folding. That's the kind of presence that stops people in their tracks, because it's not rehearsed, it's not borrowed, it's not watered down to be safe. It's earned through self-awareness, through growth, through choosing again and again to live honestly, even when it's inconvenient. There's nothing more intimate than someone who doesn't need you to validate who they are. They don't beg for understanding. They don't wait for approval. They offer their truth as a gift, not a negotiation. That energy is not loud. It's quiet and rooted. It doesn't seek attention. It commands it, because it's rare to meet someone who doesn't contort themselves just to be chosen. And when someone lives unapologetically, they don't just show up, they invite others to do the same. You feel it in the way they carry themselves, not with arrogance, but with deep ownership. Every part of them belongs to them. Their joy, their fear, their wounds, their passions. They don't deny it and they don't edit it. That kind of wholeness is disarming. It softens defense. It inspires vulnerability. Because when someone is authentic, you no longer feel like you're trying to impress them. You feel like you're being welcomed. And that welcome isn't just verbal, it's energetic. It's in the way someone listens without pretending, in the way they touch without performance, in the way they connect without trying to control the narrative. They're not here to manipulate perception, they're here to share experience. That level of honesty creates emotional safety, not because everything is easy, but because everything is real, and realness builds trust. In intimacy, authenticity is electric. It shows up when someone isn't afraid of their own desire, when they can name it, express it, embody it without apology. That freedom, sexual, emotional, spiritual, isn't performative. It doesn't aim to impress. It's simply, and that expression creates a powerful contrast to the world of scripts and surface-level interaction. It pulls people in, it captivates, because desire without shame is bold, it's rare, and it's unforgettable. Owning your truth in relationships doesn't mean being perfect. It means being present. It means taking off the armor and choosing to show up in your wholeness, even if it's messy, even if it's complicated. It means being the kind of person who doesn't just say what they think others want to hear, but speaks from a place of deep self-knowing. And when someone moves through the world like that, they don't just connect, they ignite. People remember how you make them feel, but more importantly, they remember how they felt about themselves when they were around you. When someone is fully authentic, it allows others to drop their guard, to stop performing, to stop questioning whether they're enough, because authenticity doesn't judge, it doesn't compete, it doesn't play emotional chess. It meets people exactly where they are and holds space for realness. And that's what creates emotional intimacy that lasts. Not the curated perfection, not the highlight reel, but the unfiltered presence, the ability to be fully seen and still stand tall, to be known, truly known, and not collapse under the weight of that exposure. That's not weakness, that's power. Quiet power, unshakable power, the kind of power that moves through a room without needing to speak. Authenticity and intimacy doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it's raw, uncomfortable, confronting, but it's alive. It breathes, it moves, it evolves, and it teaches anyone who experiences it that they too can drop the mask, that they can be flawed, fierce, and still loved. Because when someone chooses to be fully themselves, they give silent permission to everyone around them to do the same. That's the heartbeat of real connection. That's the energy that lingers long after the moment is gone. Not because someone tried to be perfect, but because they were real, because they knew they didn't need to dim their light to be loved, because they understood that the most irresistible thing they could ever offer was truth.